From the woman who marries a tree to the bodybuilder who marries a plastic doll, here are people who have decided to spend the rest of their lives with weird things, for better or for worse. Kate Cunningham is a British single mother who lived in the Rimrose Valley, a peaceful country park located in Merseyside in the United States. This woman in her 30s had the wish to live quietly in this beautiful and quiet region, where greenery is abundant. However, the state-owned company Highways England, responsible for improving the country's roads, was threatening the quiet life of the inhabitants. Indeed, this company planned to build a 5 kilometers long double-lane road and, consequently, planned a massive deforestation of the park. Kate wanted to avoid this catastrophe at all costs. To succeed, she began to actively search for solutions, and eventually remembered some activists in Mexico who, faced with the same problem, had found an original way to serve their ecological cause. This solution is both comical and symbolic, and Kate Cunningham carefully applied it. It was to marry a tree, in this case, an elder tree. The wedding ceremony took place in the presence of Kate's family, who supported her in this act of resistance. Without being unhappy, the new bride was not at the height of joy by marrying this great plant because she has little taste for plants and does not like gardening too much. We must therefore recognize her sense of sacrifice. Kate is far from alone in calling for the abandonment of this construction project, which has not yet begun. Indeed, it has been slowed down by the global pandemic and should be completed, according to estimates, only after 2025. A small temporary victory for Mrs. Elder. Liu Yi is a Chinese man who has just passed his 40s and has always led an unremarkable life, at least on the surface. Deep inside, Liu Yi is anything but an ordinary character. Cynical and dissatisfied with life, Mr. Yi wants to escape from the reality that he considers unworthy of interest. Consequently, he had set out to do something that would not only symbolize his rejection of reality but would also make a lot of noise, causing misunderstanding and disdain around him. For natures like Liu Yi's like to shock and displease. Now an unusual marriage had seemed to him the surest, the most flashy procedure to satisfy his misanthropic whims. And to find his other half, he didn't have to go far, since he solemnly declared his love to himself, more precisely to a life-size photograph of himself, cut out following the contours of his silhouette. In this photograph, Liu Yi appears dressed in a red wedding dress. It will be agreed that this matrimonial act is stronger than the legend of Narcissus. On the other hand, Liu Yi celebrated this marriage most traditionally. The witnesses of the party could hardly hide their dismay at the madness of the Chinese man in his 40s, and some of them even questioned his mental health. A psychologist, in particular, had declared that this implausible staging proved the mental instability of this man. In short, by getting what he wanted, Liu Yi was discredited and slandered by those around him. But he doesn't care. He lives as happily as his character allows, with his paper partner. Chervanak had been in a close and fulfilling relationship with his partner for several years, and it was very rare for them to drift apart. To consecrate these countless moments spent with her, he had decided one day to go to Las Vegas to celebrate their eternal union in a small chapel. Chervanak was not in love per se, but he felt a great deal of attachment and complicity with his fiancée. The preparations for this wedding were not easy to implement, for a rather unusual reason, and moreover, this legitimate union caused great amazement throughout the city. Why? Well, because Aaron wasn't marrying his girlfriend or his boyfriend, but his cell phone. He had already prepared himself to answer all the curiosities, saying that it is more natural than you think to marry this unwavering, helpful, and devoted companion for whom you never have any secrets. Even if this marriage was not legally recognized by the Nevada authorities, Aaron, after such a long relationship, was duly married to his iPhone, which was dressed in a beautiful white shell, and remained on a stand decorated with shiny stones. Even if this idea is not without philosophical significance, many internet users have made fun of these extravagant nuptials, for example by thanking Apple for preventing such an eccentric from procreating. But Aaron, unaffected by the mockery, is now living a harmonious life with his smartphone and continues to reflect on the interesting link between man and these small but absolutely indispensable devices. Amanda Rogers divorced 3 months after her marriage to a man who was not at all suited for her, and this early separation had grieved her. To overcome her spite and get back at her ex-husband, she decided not to leave her heart unoccupied, and she wished for a new passionate adventure. A silly little idea had begun to form in her mind as she spent more and more time with her little dog named Sheba, a Jack Russell. This energetic, enthusiastic, and stubborn dog was taking up a lot of her time, and she loved him more and more every day. Finally, there came a day when she carried out the plan that was taking shape in her mind. Amanda got down on her knees to ask her dog to marry her, and the dog seemed to accept with pleasure, as he wagged his tail vigorously. The wedding ceremony took place in Croatia, and about 100 people attended. Disillusioned after her divorce, Amanda was able to find in her dog the main qualities she was looking for in a husband, including ardor in bed. Nevertheless, this crazy alliance has triggered hostile snickers from some people, and nasty jokes about the nature of her sexual relations. In this respect, Amanda confides without the slightest embarrassment that she is completely submissive to her very dominant dog. But Amanda Rogers has moved more people than she has embittered. And she's sure to find comforting happiness for another decade or so with this sweet, young dog. In Thailand, the young Nan Tiparat and her fiancé formed a pleasant couple and promised a durable and solid happiness. They were soon to be married, and this happy consecration excited their enthusiasm and impatience. But an irreversible misfortune came to break this couple. Her beloved, called Fiat, was victim of a lightning heart attack. Without any warning symptoms, and a life of suffering and disenchantment began for the grieving girl. Nan Tiparat, who was madly in love, resolved not to resign herself to her fate. She told herself that death, which treacherously prevented her marriage, would not win her case. The young Thai girl went to the end of her love promises, supported by her family, and married her dead fiancé, in a kind of funeral wedding. But, as you can imagine, this gloomy wedding, in which there was not the slightest trace of joy, was not even the beginning of consolation for the young woman. On the contrary, the whole matrimonial scene reminded her far too much of her shattered dreams. By marrying the remains of her lover, she had in a way sealed her misfortune by giving it longevity. It goes without saying that this union was not recognized by the law. We hope with all our hearts that since that day, the young woman has managed to mourn. In Japan, there is a kind of popular pillow called dakimakura. They are pillows at least 1.5 meters long, and on which are drawn characters from cartoons or video games, usually pretty women in small clothes. Lee Jin-gyu, obsessed with manga, owns a dakimakura, and it is the effigy of the character Fate Testarossa, the heroine of an anime series. But this Korean guy is not content, like most people, to leave this big pillow in a corner of his house, as a decorative element. He is passionately attached to it and has only one dream, that his Fate Testarossa effigy comes to life, and to be truly his. Jin-gyu spent so many hours contemplating, pampering his pillow that he became crazy in love with it. Can you guess what happened next? In a special ceremony, in the company of a local priest, Jin-gyu married his pillow wrapped in a white dress, to the great hilarity of the witnesses. We must admit that the festivities were relayed with enthusiasm. Many people wonder about the mental health of this man who has such a blind passion for a pillow. Some people even feel a bit sorry for him, when it is said that he is totally obsessed with this dakimakura, that he takes it everywhere and, wherever he is, always reserves a place for it, at the fair as well as at the restaurant. Erica Eiffel is a 50-year-old American woman. In her youth, she was in the military and an international archery player. In 2004, while visiting Paris for the first time, she fell under the spell of the Eiffel Tower and immediately felt an extreme attraction for this glorious monument. This seduction that the Eiffel Tower exerted on Erica truly loved, according to her. This sudden and ardent feeling, which she became familiar with over time, also enlightened her about the erotic attachment that some people have to inanimate objects. Erica Eiffel, as you may have guessed from her name, married the Eiffel Tower, crazy as that sounds. Judging that this was the best way to confirm her love, she became the wife of the iconic Iron Tower. In return for this union, Erica had to devote a large part of her days to all sorts of media requests, and she was the subject of a multitude of publications and documentaries. Founder of OS International, she is now the spokesperson for all those concerned by objectophilia. In the Indian state of Orissa, a young woman from a humble background, named Bimbala Das, was very ill. Because of lack of money, she could not afford to treat herself. However, with the help of the villagers, she spared no effort in her search for a cure. Bimbala was superstitious and belonged to a sect that worshipped snakes. She was convinced that if she often placed a bowl of milk in front of a snake's den, she would get well. By chance, these offerings brought her luck, according to the villagers, and to celebrate this recovery, Bimbala decided to marry the snake. But the reptile, who was obviously not enchanted, did not leave its buried lair during the ceremony, which was attended by the happy villagers. The uninterested snake was replaced by a brass replica. And that didn't stop Bimbala from being overjoyed, marrying the venerable cobra. In fact, she built a hut in front of her den, and that's where she lives now. The Kazakh bodybuilder Yuri Tolochko is not an ordinary man. Aware that he needed something unusual and overexciting to revive his jaded senses, he realized one day that he was as much a man of imagination as of pleasure. What he wanted in love were disguises, fantastic creatures, unusual places and times, inconceivable objects. In short, Yuri wanted colors and strong sensations that would seem unintelligible and completely crazy to the rest of the world. With such wishes, he had naturally turned away from the easy way. The feminine and masculine seductions, too accessible, brought him only mediocre and derisory satisfactions. While his paraphilia opened his eyes to new kinds of pleasure, he had discovered, one day, a particular taste for dolls, to the point that he even fell in love with one of them. Indeed, the Margot doll won his heart, and he went so far as to ask her to marry him. Margot did not hesitate, as she literally became Yuri's wife, and the wedding was celebrated like any other wedding, with the appropriate decoration, guests, meals, musicians, and photographers. But this union with a doll has some plastic disadvantages. These fabrications being more fragile than a human body, Margot has already broken several limbs and had to be patched up many times. These accidents have made Yuri unhappy, and to console himself, he even thinks of becoming a polygamist. Now, the Kazakh doesn't want to settle for just one toy, and according to the latest news, he would now like to marry a plastic chicken. We wish him good luck in his new conquest. That's it, that's the end of this video. Tell us in the comments which one of these weddings sounds the craziest to you, and if you liked this video, don't forget to give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell, so you won't miss anything of our next publications. See you soon.